Liza Minnelli has opened up about a deeply personal and somewhat painful memory from her teenage years involving her legendary mother, Judy Garland. In her upcoming memoir, she describes a joint appearance at the prestigious London Palladium in 1965, when she was just 18 years old. What began as an exciting opportunity to perform alongside one of the greatest entertainers of all time quickly turned into a moment of tension that highlighted the complex dynamics between mother and daughter, as well as the overwhelming power of Garland's star persona. The evening started on a high note. Minnelli took the stage for her opening number, and from the wings or perhaps right beside her, she heard her mother's enthusiastic encouragement. Garland shouted out, "Yeah, baby? Go get him," in a burst of maternal pride and excitement. It was the kind of cheer that any young performer would treasure, especially coming from someone as iconic as Judy Garland, whose voice and presence had defined an era of Hollywood musicals and live performances. Minnelli felt supported, energized, and ready to showcase her own talents, which were already emerging as formidable in their own right. However, as the performance continued, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. After her second song, another "yeah" rang out from her mother, but Minnelli could sense that the enthusiasm had dimmed. It wasn't as forceful, not as heartfelt. By the time she launched into her third number, the shift was unmistakable. Garland's initial warmth had given way to something else: irritation, perhaps even jealousy or a protective instinct over her own spotlight. Minnelli recalls the moment vividly. She heard her mother whispering urgently to their producer, Harold Davison, with words that cut through the applause. "Harold, get her off my effing stage." The command was sharp, laced with frustration, and it revealed a side of Garland that Minnelli had perhaps glimpsed before but never so starkly in a professional setting. Despite the whispered directive, Minnelli didn't stop. She kept singing, pouring her energy into the performance as the audience responded with wild applause. The crowd's approval drowned out the backstage tension, but for Minnelli the realization hit hard. In that instant, she understood something profound about her relationship with her mother. She had begun the night simply as Mama's daughter, a loved and supported child stepping into the limelight with encouragement. But as the songs progressed and her own talent shone through, the dynamic changed. Now she was on stage with Judy Garland, the performer, the legend, the force of nature whose career had been built on commanding attention. The maternal instincts appeared to recede, overshadowed by the needs of the star persona that had defined Garland's life for decades. This incident was not an isolated one in Minnelli's early career. She had been touring with her mother from a very young age, thrust into a world of constant travel, hotels, and ever-changing schools. Garland had presented her children, Liza and her half-brother Joey Luft, with a clear choice: remain in Los Angeles for a more stable school life or join her on the road. Without hesitation, the siblings chose the adventure, answering in unison, "When do we leave?" The decision meant a life of instability, attending 22 different schools over the years, but also an up-close immersion in show business. Minnelli witnessed firsthand the demands of performance, the adoration of fans, and the toll it took on her mother. Tragically, that toll included Garland's well-documented struggles with addiction. Minnelli describes how, even as a young teenager, she became her mother's caretaker in ways no child should have to. At just 13 years old, she took on roles that blended nurse, doctor, pharmacologist, and psychiatrist. She lost count of the occasions when she had to call doctors to plead for refills on prescriptions, explaining desperately, "I'm a kid. Please fill my mama's prescription." It was a heavy burden, one that forced her to grow up far too quickly amid the glamour and chaos of her mother's world. The emotional weight of those years carried over into Minnelli's own life after Garland's untimely death in 1969 from an accidental overdose. Minnelli remembers crying for 8 straight days, overwhelmed by grief, stress, and tension. A doctor prescribed Valium to help her cope just before the funeral, intending it as a short-term aid. What started as a one-day relief soon spiraled into a habit and eventually a full-blown addiction. Minnelli reflects on it as a final gift, a genetic inheritance she could not escape, echoing the patterns that had plagued her mother. The stage incident at the Palladium, though painful, became a symbol of the blurred lines between family love and the relentless demands of fame.